Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Steven Universe review. This one is going to be my review for Steven Universe Summer of Steven week number 4. So the episodes I'm going to be covering on this video are Earthlings, Back to the Moon, Bubbled, The Kindergarten Kid, and also the last episode was Know Your Fusion. So this is the last 3 episodes of Season 3, and then the first 2 episodes of Season 4. Then after this, we're back to, I think, 1 episode a week from here on out. So, anyway, overall, I think this was a pretty good, solid week of Steven Universe episodes. The ending of Season 3 was really good, but not as good as it could have been. The start of Season 4, I think overall was, fun, but I think a little bit disappointing. I think I actually expected more from the start of Season 4. But I'll get into that as we go through the episodes individually. So, Earthlings, direct continuation of Beta. I obviously talked about Beta in the last video because it aired last Friday in Canada, so I just reviewed it. So, Earthlings, continuation of that episode. This is basically the confrontation between Amethyst and Jasper again, plus the introduction of a new fusion, Smoky Quartz, who is the fusion of Amethyst and Steven, the first fusion of Steven with a gem. So that was a pretty big thing. And this as the episode that basically ends the threat of Jasper. They, talk a little bit about her and she directly is kind of the reason the next 2 episodes happen and that the rubies come looking for her, basically. So, but she as a character is kind of gone as of this episode because of her defeat. I thought it was okay. I ultimately don't think that they fully nailed this Jasper kind of is the villain for these couple of episodes arc. It worked as a kind of good opponent for Amethyst and Steven as they were dealing with what they were dealing with. But I just don't feel they fully went everywhere they needed to go. Ultimately, I get what they went for in that, okay, Jasper is still more powerful than Amethyst. Even though she has all these kind of new moves that she learned in the fight against Steven, in Amethyst versus Steven versus Amethyst, she still wasn't good enough to take on Jasper one-on-one. And the big moment for Amethyst in terms of her character arc, basically the resolution for now of her not feeling strong enough and that she's not fit for her purpose, as she kind of talked about, is that she fuses with Steven. And I get what they were going for here, in that her development wasn't going to be that suddenly she, on her own, is powerful enough to be able to defeat a super powerful gem like Jasper. What they went for is the fact that, okay, you may not be the strongest, you may be smaller than perhaps most gems like you, but you have a team of people behind you who will support you in so many different ways, and you also can do this thing to help power you up by fusing with them. I get that that's what they were going for, but I think you can't help but sort of feel like, is that really the best way to approach this arc? Because fundamentally, Amethyst still feels like she's not as strong, and they didn't really address that. It's just, oh, I can fuse with Steven now to become stronger than Jasper. It's just like, okay, I sort of felt like what Jasper was saying, but in more of a kind of criticism of the stories type sense, like fusion, is that all you can do? Is that the only trick that you have? I kind of felt like that like, oh, that it was a cool fusion, and that, I'll talk about the fusion in a minute, but I can't help but feel like they should have done something where Amethyst on her own did something. But again, maybe the arc isn't fully over yet. They might do something in Season 4 with her. But that said, I did like Smoky Quartz. The fusion of Steven and Amethyst, it was a surprise, and they're like, oh, finally confirmation that Steven can actually fuse with other gems. That leaves the potential open for a bunch of other fusions for him, which could be really interesting. I like the design. I think it's a really nice blend of Steven and Amethyst. I love the unique weapon of the yo-yos, the combination of Amethyst's whip as the string and then Steven's shield as the yo-yo itself. And then the powers that Smoky Quartz had worked really well, and it made for a pretty nice fight as Jasper knew that she couldn't face a fusion one-on-one, and so she fused with the corrupted gems that she had nearby, and the result of that is that she ends up corrupting herself. It makes her more powerful, but it makes her more kind of feral, wild powerful. And when she unfuses, she herself is corrupted because of this. And that's an interesting reveal in and of itself, that when you fuse with a corrupted gem and you yourself are not corrupted, that causes you to become corrupted, because I suppose, two become one, and now they're kind of each a part of each other, so the corruption becomes part of Jasper, I think is what they were going for. And she becomes corrupted, and obviously this is where we get the moment where like Jasper starts this little arc of the last couple of episodes where we start to get this mention of like Pink Diamond, Rose's connection to Pink Diamond. So what Jasper says here is, something about my diamond, you like did something, and then Steven's like, yellow diamond? No, my diamond, your diamond, Pink Diamond. So we're definitely referring to that. So, you know, basically setting up this idea of like what happened to Pink Diamond, and it leads directly into the kind of following episode, but not before. Smoky Quartz doesn't poof Jasper, it's actually Peridot, who the whole episode they've been setting up, her metal power, she's going to do something, and in the last moment, as kind of Steven and Amethyst unfuse, it looks like they've already won, but there's still one final attack from Jasper in her fusion, and that's when Peridot uses her metal powers, impales basically Jasper with the kind of metal rod, and poofs her, and it was a big moment. Just another one that like add that plus what happened in the episode Bismuth, plus what happens in the episode Bubbled, and you're getting a kind of idea of the plot theme that they're going for here. So next episode, Back to the Moon. Probably my favorite from the week, this one actually. I really liked this, in that I felt it managed to find the best blend of fun, but also important and new character revealing stuff. In that, okay, the rubies come back. This is going to be a fun episode straight away. And then they do the thing where like, okay, Amethyst is going to transform into Jasper and trick the rubies into basically leading to them to the moon base and learning some stuff about the diamond base that's on the moon. Like, pretty cool idea for an episode. You had some fun stuff as all the rubies are like obsessed with Jasper and really impressed by her and really want to help her. There was a real connection presented there. And then they get to the moon base, and like effectively the big reveal is that one of the rubies' eyeball reveals that like, I was there. What happened to Pink Diamond was that Rose Quartz, the leader of the rebellion, led a rebellion, took it too far, and shattered Pink Diamond. And that's kind of where we kind of more or less leave things off. There is a fight scene. Garnet and Pearl fuse into Sardonyx. Sardonyx smashes the 5 fusion ruby out the airlock which Steven's opened, but Steven goes out the airlock with them, setting up Bubbled that the rubies and Steven are floating in space. But the big reveal is obviously Rose shattered Pink Diamond, and you get big reactions from a lot of the characters. Pearl is visibly shaking. She's like very like, this has been brought up again, and it really makes you believe that like whatever happened, the situation around Rose shattering Pink Diamond, Pearl was like directly involved in it. I think that's what we're getting from this. This wasn't just something she was told and it hurts her to hear it. It really comes across like she was there and directly involved with what happened. To the point where I'm thinking that like Rose saved Pearl directly by shattering Pink Diamond or something like that. That Pearl was potentially Pink Diamond's Pearl or something like that. And Steven, of course, like was on the verge of tears at hearing that his mother could have potentially done something like this, because of course Steven doesn't really have any interest in shattering anyone. It was a big deal for him to poof Bismuth, so they continue that obviously in Bubbled. So this is the finale. The Bubbled as a finale episode, I think, was good, but not really a finale episode. The problem with this episode was that it didn't have the high enough stakes that you would usually think of for a finale episode. The other problem is that by the end of the episode, things are just back to normal. Like, everything is kind of out there, and the mysteries that they've set up and the kind of shocking reveals that they have, they're not going to explain them. Like, the way this episode ends is just like, okay, that was a big reveal, let's go back to normal. And I think that's the problem with this episode, fundamentally. In that you have that important scene in obviously most of the episode in space, Steven in the bubble, and then the eyeball Ruby, and it's an interesting interaction, but fundamentally doesn't have the impact that any other character would have because it is just a Ruby, and I like what they did in the sense of okay, this Ruby is very kind of caring about Jasper and what happened to Pink Diamond, and is very much represents homeworld attitude to things. And it's basically the whole episode is just Steven trying to prove to this Ruby that he is in fact Rose Quartz, that she turned into him. And you have this moment of basically him trying to get her onto his side. She's on the outside of the bubble, very frustrated about what happened, blaming him for what happened. She gets hit by a meteorite, her gem cracks but doesn't shatter. Steven heals it, and this confirms to this Ruby that this is in fact Rose Quartz, just in a different form. And from there, the episode takes a slightly darker turn. The Ruby turns on Steven and is about to kill him within the bubble, because obviously Steven brings the Ruby into the bubble to heal it. And I like what they did here, in that this is the one theme that I really liked across the last couple of episodes. Steven being forced into these situations where he can't just talk someone down. As much as he wants to and thinks that that's the proper and correct way to do things, that we can do this peacefully, we don't have to fight, there's no need to poof or shatter anyone. He has now been forced into a lot of situations where he's kind of had to do this. It was him or Bismuth. Either die or poof Bismuth, and he had to do what he had to do. The thing with Jasper, they won the fight, but he couldn't, Amethyst and Steven couldn't really bring themselves, they didn't get to the point where they poofed or shattered her, and it was left to Peridot to do that. And again, the way she did it was more of a kind of self-defense thing, that like, Jasper attacked, Peridot defended herself. Like, that's two situations straight there. And then this one, in a bubble, very confined space, this Ruby is attacking him with her knife. And the only thing he can do to defend himself is to quickly open the bubble, send her flying away, close the bubble. And it's this idea that to Steven, he's effectively, in his mind, killed that Ruby. There's a chance she could live, obviously, but the idea that like they just got out of this asteroid field, he could have just sent her flying back into that asteroid field, and she could get shattered by anything hitting her just floating around in space. That's how dangerous this situation is. And I like that they presented this idea that he more or less, his actions led to either that gem getting hurt, shattered, killed, whatever you want to say, or at the very least put in an insane amount of danger. And he's really come to understand that sometimes there are situations where these things just have to happen. And so that links with the end of the episode, of course, when the crystal gems find him in space, in the spaceship, and you have that emotional moment. Nice sequence. Crying, they have him back, he's not dead, and he just asked a question at the end of the episode: did she really do it? And Garnet answers and just says, yes, she did shatter Pink Diamond. It was the only way to save Earth. She had to do it. It's part of war and stuff like that. She just presented it very kind of clearly. Didn't try to overly explain away but there were these reasons behind why it's not as bad as we think it is. It's just, no, she did it, and as part of our cause, what we believe in, she had to do it. Just very, honestly, but without revealing a ton, telling us what happened. So there's no weird situation where she actually didn't do it because of this and this. No, regardless of the situation about what exactly happened, Rose directly shattered Pink Diamond. Now, there probably is a bigger story to that, of course, but just getting confirmation that did in fact happen, there's no explaining it away, was important. And I liked Steven's reaction, because he was like, okay, she did it, there's reasons for why she did it, and it's because he's just been through all these situations. The Bismuth thing, the Jasper thing, and now the thing with the eyeball. All the situations, similar, because he was involved in battle against these people, and he was eventually forced into a situation where he couldn't talk them down. He had to fight, throw them away, do something to save himself and the people around him, and he's understanding that okay, his mother's not this, perfect being he's potentially thought about. She's was involved in these situations too. She was the leader of a war, in a war, basically. So yeah. So yeah, good episodes, like overall. The end of season 3, really good. Just didn't quite hit it as home as big as possible. And part of that is because of how season 4 starts. They don't directly lead into, like, oh, season 3 has ended, big stuff has happened, let's immediately go into season 4 with this big stuff in mind and, like, continue the kind of intensity on. They leave season 3 off in a way where, like, okay, we've hinted at some stuff and some reveals, but fundamentally we've left things back in a state where things are back to normal by the start of season 4. And I think that's the frustration. This show has gotten a little bit too into the mindset of telling and not showing. In that they're telling us all this stuff about Rose, but they're not showing us parts of the war, about this stuff that happened, and it's beginning to get a bit frustrating. I understand that when we do eventually get this war flashback, if it is indeed coming, if we are going to get it, it's going to be big, and they're probably saving it for a really important point. But I feel like they should have touched on some of this. I think part of what was missing from these episodes was just showing us a little bit. Maybe you didn't have to show us all, but even a tiny little flashback of showing, like, roughly the situation in the past. And it's very much becoming a case where I think more and more people are beginning to feel similarly, that it's become a bit frustrating that they aren't quite delivering as much as we feel they need to be delivering. But anyway, let's move on to season 4, the kindergarten kid, the first episode. And to me, like, I feel very similarly about this episode and Know Your Fusion. The way they're written is just kind of weird to me, in that it's this concept for an episode that seems really interesting, but the way they approach doing that takes away so much from the episode. So the idea being that, like, okay, that with the kindergarten kid, we have this episode where it's like, okay, this kind of really quick and agile corrupted gem has fled. And the crystal gems have basically said, Peridot, as your first mission as a crystal gem, you take this one back. Prove to us that you can do more than what we can. And so her first kind of big mission as a crystal gem is to get this one back. Steven stays to help her, and the others kind of leave, but they're kind of watching. It is a training thing, basically. And this seems really cool. Like, this is going to be Peridot's initiation officially as a crystal gem. She's going to get her star at the end of the episode or something like that. She's potentially going to get, poofed in the process, but in a funny way, and then reform with the new design. They didn't do that. And I think that was disappointing, but, they're the expectations I had versus what the episode actually did. Fair enough, they didn't have to deliver the character redesign right now. I think we know it's coming at some point, but, like, it obviously didn't happen immediately here. The problem with this episode was that it was so focused on being this Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner parody type thing, that they're doing an episode like that it took away from anything of note, of seriousness, any real development happening. In that they attempted to do this thing where, like, it was Peridot better understanding the feelings and what exactly a corrupted gem is. And they had that in that, like, Steven and, like, the scene with the marshmallows, the endless suffering thing, they're not stupid, they're just, different. That was like, okay, that's fine. And you have Peridot, acting more like a, like, kind of like an animal to kind of gain the trust of the corrupted gem to get closer to it. But in the end, like, she just, like, knocks it off a cliff, and together, they get down, and it proves she doesn't. We get this reveal that Peridot is actually super, like, sturdy. It's, like, super hard to poof her and stuff like that. But that was the episode. Like, I don't feel Peridot really learned a lot from this episode, and it was because they spent so much time on these kind of plans and doing the whole Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner thing of just her becoming more and more frustrated, and didn't spend enough time in terms of, like, the character stuff. I liked the premise for the episode in that Garnet clearly let this corrupted gem run off because she kind of saw a thing of the future where, like, if she did let it run off, Peridot would do this, Steven would help her, and Peridot would become better for the process. Like, I like that use of kind of Garnet's future power, that she kind of knew that this was going to happen. But the episode itself, I think, just kind of missed the mark a little bit. Again, it was fun, and I liked the bit at the end of the episode where she does bubble it, and it's revealed that she can do that power too. She can bubble gems, and she can send it back. And I like the reveal about, okay, so when you bubble something, it doesn't just automatically go to the temple. It's not just a case of like that technique directly relates to the temple. It's where you consider to be home. And so where she sends the bubble back to is the barn. And we see Lapis at the end, and we see the bubble up there at the top. And that was nice. That she considers the barn with Lapis as home. That was really, really nice to get. Really kind of cute moment at the end. It's just that, like, what was that the core of the episode? That she considered that home? That was just a nice little reveal. But what about the whole corrupted gems thing? Like, is she actually part of the crystal gems? And it was kind of conflicting, because this was a mission as a crystal gem, yet the barn is in a completely separate area to where the temple is. So how can she be an effective crystal gem if she's off with Lapis? It's just, there's a little bit of confusion there about, like, how can she properly be a crystal gem if she's not with the team most of the time? Or are we just going to get this position where eventually Lapis decides that she's also going to join and we get the full team together? I don't really know. Last episode, Know Your Fusion. I think this had the potential to be a really, really good episode. Just this idea that we're going to get two fusions talking to each other, getting to know each other. Amazing. Like, really cool. Like, delving into more details about what a fusion is and, like, how they are different than the sum of their parts. And we sort of got that, but again, like the kindergarten kid, the concept of this episode took away from the plot and focus of this episode, in that they were just so obsessed with this game show idea and telling all of these meta jokes and stuff like that, that the core of this episode is the jokes rather than getting to know Sardonyx, getting to know Smoky Quartz. And that's the problem. Too much time spent telling these jokes and not enough time actually telling important stuff. And it's not that I'm against them telling jokes. It's just that jokes at the expense of what the episode is meant to be about is a problem for me. And I just really, like, I don't feel like I got a lot out of this episode, because fundamentally this episode was just telling jokes, and then, like, 2 minutes from the end, like, really suddenly, like, it's just like Sardonyx is just like, oh wait, they were trying to impress us earlier on. We took over the show, and then Pearl and Garnet defuse, and they kind of the Sardonyx's room begins to fall apart because she's not together anymore, and Smoky Quartz saves the day, and we just get this kind of nice thing at the end. We're like, okay, we won't take the stage from you anymore, and it's just like, okay, you left this way too late. I like the ending in that they're all like, they're all actually really enthusiastic about, like, the yo-yo power and what it can do and stuff like that. But I felt they just really missed the mark on actually trying to delve into something pretty big. I get what they were going for in the earlier parts of the episode, in that Smoky Quartz, like, what is great about you? What is your kind of big thing? And all Smoky Quartz could talk about was like, oh, I have this yo-yo and kind of self-depreciating humor and stuff like that. And the idea is that this is not a fusion of, like, love or anything like that. It's not that type of fusion. This is a fusion of two people who felt they weren't good enough coming together to form something that is stronger, but, still has some confidence issues, but, can make up a little bit for the confidence issues of the two members of the fusion. I got what they were going for there, that fundamentally Smoky Quartz isn't just this being of pure confidence, that she represents the kind of, self-esteem issues of the two participants of the fusion. And it's not as bad with her, but it does represent that she still kind of talks about herself, like, I have this elbow and stuff like this, and, all she can really talk about is her yo-yo, and doesn't really see a lot of strengths in herself. But when the time comes down to it, Smoky Quartz can actually do stuff, and the action scene of her saving Pearl and Garnet was quite nice. It's just that I don't feel this episode really hit home as much as it should have. I felt like the episode was more about Sardonyx in a way than Smoky Quartz, which I don't think is a problem. It's just that, again, as I said, the development for Sardonyx as a character was just like so sudden. It's just like, okay, here's like 10 minutes of the episode, game show host Sardonyx, and then 1 minute of just like, oh my god, we took over this really impressive thing they wanted to show us. And it's just like, okay, really sudden ending. And it relates to a lot of the problem with some of the episodes that have happened recently, in that too many of these episodes I think are just fun for like 6-7 minutes, and then they get into the important stuff at the end. Why can't we have a more balance across the episode of like, no, it's fun because it's Steven Universe, of course it's fun, but it's also telling you something of note. And that's just something I hope they improve on as we go forward. As I've said, I think the show has problems with regards to the 11-minute format, not giving the writers enough time per episode. I think they should do more 22-minute episodes, and I think then if they still want to continue doing 11-minute episodes, they have to find a way to balance, what they want to do in an episode better. If you're struggling to get your main point across, take away a couple of those jokes. Don't spend as much time on the jokes and fun parts of the episode. Get your theme across first, and then fill in the rest with jokes if you want to. I like Sardonyx. I like what they did here, in that basically Pearl and Garnet fused together is kind of this show off. It's a kind of showboater type character who is super confident, but kind of steals the spotlight from anyone around her, and it's kind of overwhelming. And you could see the interaction between Sardonyx and Smoky Quartz was very much like that, where it was kind of Sardonyx just being like, "Tell us what's great about yourself. What's so great?" Like, and just like Smoky Quartz, like, I don't want to talk about myself in this way because I don't feel that way about myself, and that was good, but it could have been better. So yeah, that's week 4. I'm really glad they showed a promo for the next couple of episodes, in that I'm glad they're hinting at some bigger stuff coming sooner rather than later, because I'm a little bit concerned about the show going to 1 episode a week. Not like making it a 22-minute thing and having 2 episodes per week, but like, no, just 1 episode a week, 1 11-minute episode a week was a little bit concerning, but seeing that, like, okay, there seems to be some really quality episodes coming up is giving me hope. So I'll continue to review the episodes weekly as they come out from here on out. But for now, that's been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episodes. I know I gave a lot of criticisms here, but I do really like the show. I just think it definitely has some improvements to make before it fully becomes like utterly amazing. And I think it can get to that point. It's just some writing problems, some format problems hold it down a little bit. So give me your comments on that in the comment section below. But other than that, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.